Om Ajnana-timirandasya Jnananjana Shalakaya Chakshurunmilitam Dhena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namah.
I must tell you that our dear President himself is a very expert Kirtanier, and I'm sure you'll have an opportunity. Are you going to sing?
No.
No? Okay. I'm sure you'll have an opportunity to hear him sing at our future events, so you should definitely look forward to it. Today we'll hear some nice message from him.
Well, I would sing, but you asked me to speak, so. Welcome everyone to Kirtan Yoga, and this is following a tradition which has been passed down for thousands of years. And in the ancient scriptures, the Vedas, there is an important statement, anavritti shabdat, in Sanskrit means liberation through sound. And how can we understand this? Recently, when I was walking in the Muir Woods, it's not the Muir Woods, just Muir Woods. In Muir Woods, have any of you been there? It's an extraordinary place. It's like walking through a car wash for the subtle body. You walk through and you feel subtly purified by the atmosphere there, which is altogether possible. As I was walking through with a couple of visitors from Hungary who I was showing around, we noticed that there was a volunteer ranger who was up to his knees. He had waders on. He was in the stream that goes through the park. This is a park full of ancient redwoods. And he had a long pair of tongs with which he was pulling things out of the stream and putting them in a large bucket. So we went over and talked to him and asked him what he was doing. And he said that he was fishing micro trash out of the river. And we said, what's micro trash? And he said, well, all kinds of tiny little pieces of aluminum foil, things that have been attached to candy bars and gum wrappers and so forth, detach themselves. And they all end up in the water eventually. They're blown in there. And not only that, he said, visitors come from all over the world, and there's a popular, I don't know what to call it, habit people have of throwing pennies in the water for good luck. Have any of you seen this before? Somehow or other, this is caught on around the world. Wherever there's a small body of water, people throw some coins in the water and make a wish. Apparently this wish will come true. So people from many countries come to Muir Woods and they'll toss coins into the water. So he pulls those out also. And then he explained to us that the microtrash disturbs the honing skills and abilities of the salmon that live there. The salmon are called the Kehoe salmon, and they're very important species. They actually support the ecosystem there. We can tell the health of the ecosystem in California a lot by how the salmon are doing. In fact, I have a friend who is an industrial engineer who works up in Sacramento, and one of his main jobs is making sure that the salmon are healthy because there's so many dams along the rivers everywhere you go. And if the salmon die, then everything dies. They represent something very important and hold together the ecosystem. So he said that these little objects in the water disturb the smelling of the salmon. And then he told us the story of the Kehoe salmon, who are born in the freshwater stream that runs through the park. And after they're born, they make a long journey all the way downstream into the ocean. And apparently biologists have followed several of these fish because sometimes they swim for thousands of miles. And they go long distances into the ocean and they live most of their life in the salt water. Then, miraculously, they find their way back to the very stream they were born in. And they swim back upstream. And I remember this when I was a kid. My parents used to take me camping and traveling up into the wilderness in many places. I remember in Canada, there were streams coming down from the mountains, and there were fish ladders. I said, what are fish ladders? And you just wait and see. And you can see the salmon, they provide a little structure for the salmon to jump from one level to the next, going up some of the rapids. And they find their way all the way back to their original birthplace in the original stream. How do they do that? Well, according to our ranger, they smell their way back. Their sense of smell is so strong that they're able to sense where they were originally born, and they find their way back. And the microtrash that's thrown in the water disturbs that sense of smell, so it obstructs their ability to find their way upstream back to home. So as I was thinking about this in relationship to Kirtan Yoga and the statement in the ancient Vedic scriptures, anavritti shabdat, that you can liberate yourself, you can find your way home through the power of sound. The scriptures make much out of the fact that the most powerful sense for the human being and the most useful sense is the sense of hearing. That we can hear our way back to our original home. And by the way, according to the Bhagavad Gita and many other yoga scriptures, this material world is not our home. That may be good news. Because it's described in many ways. One way is dukhalayam. Alayam means a place. And duk means, well, misery. Sometimes it's described as unhappiness. And what it really means, originally, the etymology takes us back, and the Sanskrit word duk means the axle in a wheel which is out of balance. Whenever the wheel moves, it squeaks and it bumps and it has friction. I don't know about you, but that sounds familiar to me regarding my own life. There are always some kind of squeaking or some kind of rough edges, no matter what we do, no matter what I do. And when one lives in duk, or out of balance, then one's life tends to have these disturbances. So, dukhalaya means a place where you're always off balance, always disturbed. And home is the place where we actually feel completely compatible, and love is flowing. Love balances everything. And the true love of the heart is originally there with our divine source in the spiritual world. We describe as Krishna, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, who's the source of everything and the complete whole. So, anavritti shabdat. Like the salmon, the yogis who perform the Kirtan Yoga, they hone their sense of hearing very carefully, and they listen for the sound that is unlike any other sound in this world. And according to the yoga scriptures, which teach this science of Kirtan Yoga, if you listen carefully and long enough to the sound of the mantra, you'll notice that it doesn't sound like anything else in this world. It doesn't sound like, I want to hold your hand. Because I remember that from when I was in 3rd grade, I think. That was the Beatles, if any of you were too young for that one. But there are many sounds that can enter the ear and have a different effect than the mantra. So in Kirtan Yoga, one is selective about what sounds go in. Another example, which struck me one day when I was walking in my own neighborhood in Burlingame, California. And that is, by every storm drain along the sidewalks, there's a little emblem. And any of you who are from the Bay Area will recognize this. There's a picture of a fish on it, and it says, "No dumping, drains to bay." Familiar? You've seen this? Means that somebody in the suburbs who throws something down the drain or washes it down their driveway and it goes down the gutter and goes into the drain, a storm drain, it ends up in the San Francisco? San Francisco? Correct. So similarly, as I was walking by those storm drains, I was thinking, these ears on either side of my head are just like storm drains. And there should be a little sign, no dumping. Drains to the heart. The heart is the reservoir. This is where we collect all the sounds that come in. And according to the Upanishads, Anyareva hor sambhavad, anyarahora sambhavat, iti shushrumathiranam yenas tad vichichakshire. That one result is obtained by hearing spiritual sound, and a completely different result is obtained from listening to material sound. And those who practice the Kirtan Yoga will notice that just by focusing their attention on the spiritual sound and allowing it to go in means it's a passive activity. It's a way of being submissive to the sound, letting it enter and letting it reside within the heart. It does its own work. It has its own magic. We don't have to try so hard. We just have to be open to the sound. And at the same time, one should notice that if you happen to listen to the news cycle on CNN for 48 hours in a row, you may feel a little agitated. Why? Because it's a different kind of sound. And you can compare the two for yourself. You don't have to take it on faith, but you can try this as an experiment. Even holistic healers like Dr. Andrew Weil recommends, go on a news fast. Don't listen to the 24-hour news cycle. You'll get an anxiety. It's created just to put you in anxiety. And there are lots and lots of sounds like that. So be discriminatory. Make sure that you don't listen to things that will agitate the heart, that will end up in the bay of your heart. And they will stay there for a long, long time. And they may float up at any time to agitate the mind. So yogis who are interested in making advancement can take to this process of Kirtan Yoga and selectively listen to the mantra in many different ways. You can chant it as a prayer under your own breath. You can chant it silently in your mind, or you can listen to it in the kirtans that we're having today and in other places, and you'll find the effect for yourself. And like the salmon, no matter how far away from your original home you are, you'll be able to find your way back by the sound of the mantra. Thank you very much. Gaur Premanande Haribo.
Thank you very much, Vaisesika Prabhu. There couldn't have been better analogies to explain the importance of mantra meditation and Kirtan Yoga. That was really nice. Thank you very much for those inspiring words.
Nachari Armarman, Nachari Armarman, Nachari Armarman, Nachari Armarman, hey, Nachari Armarman, Nachari Armarman, Nachari Armarman, Nachari Armarman.